Welcome to Uplift, inspiring stories to uplift the world. I am Gemma Serenity Gorokov, and today we have, for the third time, Jacob, now I learned it, Jacob McGill. Thank you so much for coming back. It's so important. You have so much goodness to share that I cannot get enough of your of the value you bring. So let's start with a story. How was your great-grandfather?
Yeah, thank you for having me back. And I do really appreciate being here. So just to set this up a little bit, like the story kind of came out of the conversation we were having before, we started recording today. And really the fundamental piece here has to do with the primary distinction, right? At 80/20 Media, we've got a couple primary distinctions. One of the most important ones is consuming versus creating. So that's really what we started talking about. And the example that I gave you was something that I learned from my childhood. Now, I was, very fortunate, I guess, in the way that we were fairly close to my grandparents, and I think that was something that was really important to my parents and to my family. And one of the things that my father made sure of was that each of the grandchildren had their week with our grandparents during summer vacation, so that we got to develop our own relationship with them. And it wasn't just the, family holidays. You see them at Easter and Christmas and that kind of stuff. And so that kind of deepened the experience. And I got to know my grandfather fairly well. He was an electrical engineer. He spent most of his life, in the 40-40 plan, working behind a desk. By the time I had grown up and spending time with him, although I heard stories from my dad's childhood where, they were bringing electricity to rural Alberta. So there were stories of him coming home from some farm off in the middle of nowhere and then being so grateful that they'd given him some eggs and a chicken kind of thing. And, it's like, I don't know what to do with a chicken, basically. But he, grew up in this suburban situation, in this suburban environment. And then my father left the city to raise his family. And I grew up on this acreage, but it was back to the city for this week with grandma and grandpa every summer. Now, during that time, I saw a very interesting thing that, I later realized was a prime example of this consuming versus creating distinction. Because again, my grandfather was in this, corporate environment, I guess, in this office job. He had graduated up the ladder into this box that he was in. And sometimes I'd go out and run errands with him. It was always fun to ride in the car around the city and that kind of stuff. And very often we'd go to the hardware store, right? Which just seems like a normal, manly thing to do. It's like where men would gather. And I guess the perfect combination one day somebody should invent is a hardware store that's also a sports bar, right? So they can have everything they need under one roof. And so inside of these hardware stores, we'd hang out for a while. He would often, being an engineer, explain to me how certain things worked and kind of give me the nuances of how they actually function, which was fascinating to me. And eventually he'd end up buying a couple tools, and then we'd leave the store and end up at home. Now, the piece about it was that the tools would go down into the basement, right? Like my grandmother kept a very tidy home. There was, of course, the living room that you weren't allowed to go into of that generation, right? The dining room that you only went into on holidays, not the regular kitchen table and that kind of stuff. And there was no place for tools on the main floor or the upper floor. That stuff lived in the basement. And so at some point, we'd go down to the basement and he'd place that brand new tool next to the 1, 2, or 3 other versions of that same tool that he bought over the years. And this is the situation we found when he eventually passed away. And, you know, we went to clean out the house and clean out the basement, that kind of stuff. You could have literally opened a hardware store at that point because there were all these brand new tools that were there. And that's really what the consumer society looks like, right? That era, that generation, especially, that's when the like packaged food really came online. The whole like just add water, everything else is in here to make a sauce stuff. All those things of like the done for you generation where they were all trained to be consumers, and that like middle class and the boomers really came online is a perfect example of it. And we're still seeing the cascade effect of that stuff to this day. And so that's really where the conversation came together, because again, at 80/20 Media, we will help you create things, right? But we're not here to support the consumption of them. And so as much as I want everybody to have the tools that we provide, and we do give a ton of them away, the fact remains that we know we're all dealing with human beings. And the likelihood that you're going to take that thing that will probably make the difference between your business starting one day into actually launching is right there. But the likelihood that you're actually going to do anything with it is very low, right? And it's just because you're human. If you think that's not you, you're either in the 1% or look down because you don't have a belly button, right? The rest of us in human nature, we need an environment where there's a pull for us to do things. And so that's why at every single level, whether it's the free stuff or the low cost stuff or the more expensive stuff where a lot more work is done for you, it's the environment that we focus on, that we work on, that we're constantly tuning and refining, because that's the only thing that's going to make a difference. The fact remains the same. And one of my favorite examples of this, there's a brilliant TED Talk by Mel Robbins called How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over. And she points this out numerous times. She's like, every single instruction to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish in the world is available to you, right? You could type it out on the internet. Everybody has access to that. And you will find 400,000 blogs, a million YouTube videos, right? Dozens of step-by-step instruction manuals, books, you name it, on how to go from A to B to C. They're already sitting there in front of you. So we do not lack the information. We do not lack the know-how. We do not lack the process. We do not lack the guidance. What we lack comes down to the motivation or the intention to do something. And that's always met by resistance, right? Human beings are expansion prevention machines. We are like genetically pre-programmed to stay inside the 40%. Which comes from the Navy SEALs, the 40% rule, right? Like our brain will save 60% of our energy just in case all the time. And unless you're David Goggins or again, like one of these 0.00001 people, you won't break through that all on your own and channel it and figure out a way to overcome it. So you need to find places and people that will help you.
That's right. And this is where you absolutely thrive at helping people, when those who are ready to upgrade, ready to get uncomfortable, ready to break through their own resistance. And then when those people reach out to you because they have a goal, a mission, a vision, they know what they want to achieve, this is where you thrive, because now you can actually really dive into the nitty-gritty of implementing the tools, like using the tools, not just like having them and one day selling them or giving them away because there is no room anymore.
I love the way you enunciated that. And yeah, my short version of it, because I'm always trying to simplify it, is really that, like, if you bring the why, we'll show you how. But that's also why I define myself as a consultant. Like, I will tell you exactly what your next best step is so that you can do it. But I'm not here to help you feel like doing it. right? There's got to be something within you that's causing that. And if you have that, then you can have anything you want on the planet. If you're looking to discover it, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to tell each person how to find that within themselves. There are other people out there who specialize it. But for me, like anytime I'm lacking that sense of it, I live in the mountains. And so I just find some place and I start going uphill. And that's what it feels like, right? It's just like gravity doesn't want me to do this, and it's up to me to take the next step. But I love that feeling. I enjoy that environment. I'm like happy when I'm hiking uphill or moving uphill. And whether it's summer or winter, the fun part about the winter, of course, is then you can take the skins off and ski back down. Whereas in the summer, you have to hike back down. It takes just as much effort both ways. But that feeling of like going up the hill despite the resistance of gravity is the only thing I can say. Like I know what it feels like every single time.
And that is what we can easily connect with the entrepreneur mindset, where, okay, let's go uphill against our pre-programmed human minds that will resist and that will have a hard time getting to do things. Even though it is the most important things, even though it is the biggest dream, even though it is what you truly desire to be, to live, to experience. Yeah, so why are you not doing it? And that is where there is this famous resistance. So I do have a energy healing program that actually release those inner resistance so that you can tap into that ability to actually manifest your life, and then can go to Jacob to actually bring together all the tools and know what tools to use when and why, and have that accountability that keeps guiding you toward yourself, actually.
And that's really valid work. Like we talked about this in the earlier episodes, but I actually went through that myself. Right. Again, I'm a 1%er. I don't wish this upon anyone, but I found my calling coming out of the coma and the accident and the hospital bed and all that kind of stuff. And it's pretentious to think that like it was there when I woke up, right? I had to search for it and dig for it and find it and work for it. So somewhere between 17 and 23, I finally kind of landed and got back into my body. And then from there, I spent that next decade learning everything I could about health and well-being, mostly because I was motivated to like, again, like I left the hospital and the medical system having had my life saved, which they're really good at. But the quality of life thing wasn't handled. I was set up to, like, at this age, I'd be a cripple if I hadn't done anything to change the way I left the hospital. And so I was curious, I was driven, I was motivated, and I went through, like, I got 9 modalities in terms of like the paperwork and certification. Some of it was energy work, as a Reiki master by the time I was like 25 and that kind of stuff. And that work was fundamental to shifting the, I guess, the inner work that was required to eventually, set me free. And then I went through 2 versions of it, right? The first version was really one-on-one, like how do I help people with this stuff that I've learned? And that's the 100-year plan. And it's not that I don't work in groups or that kind of stuff, but when it's a really serious thing, that's when the one-on-one work, shows up. And that happens to be my specialty. That's where I shine in my zone of genius. And I hope everybody finds that for themselves. Once you find that, I figured out how to turn it into a business. Right. And then I had that 6-year period of running my own practice and, a 3-month waiting list for the last 3 years, like just really loving what I was doing every single day. But I was missing some pieces. I hit that wall. I had some burnout, and there's a longer story there. And then I decided I was going to move it online. And that's when 80/20 Media got born, because, wow, I was doing that. I'm a systems thinker. I'm a process guy, and I saw it, and I'm like, oh, we have a thing. Like this can be used to help other people do this as well. And so that's really like the transition piece for me is 80/20 Media became the place where I get to help the helpers, right? So we work with heart-based businesses that are out to change other people's lives. That can be anything that matters to you, right? Whether that's like studying butterflies, right? Or ikebana and doing flower arranging, like as long as it serves your passion in the world and it's how you want to serve others, it qualifies. So it doesn't have to be some sort of mystical, like I'm going to create the next Facebook thing. And it's really important not to get stuck in that or locked in that. But when you do, when you find yourself and you're like, I'm happiest doing this, now you're creating, right? And you're setting aside the consumption stuff. And then for me, that's that thing that we've been talking about, right? That will carry you uphill, like whatever your version is for you, to actually reach the summit, to stick with the analogy. And it's entirely possible for every single one of us. The rest of it is having that thing being important enough that you don't quit. That's all. Like that's how you actually win. You just don't quit.
Yeah, you don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
When you accept that you don't quit, that also means that when it gets hard, when it gets difficult, when it gets sticky, and sometimes straight out painful. I mean, just think of it. You don't quit for the sake of getting some relief. You succeed to get the relief you're looking for, meaning that you push through because on the other side of that pain, there is that immense satisfaction to actually have the entire view on top of the mountain, to have that sense of achievement, to have that, to get into the habit of achieving. And I believe that as a 1%er, you have stepped into that habit of achieving. And that is also what you help so much other people do.
And it's really about falling in love with the process, right? Like you just reminded me of something that was one of the phrases that was always used around the Aikido dojo, right? And it's essentially fall down 7 times, get up 8. Right? And that's one of the things that I love about that culture and the language and stuff is, again, they just make things so simple. Right? That's all you need to remember. It's just like one more time. Like one more time. Why? For the sake of it. And then when you fall in love with that process, then you're creating. Right? You don't have to even know what you're creating. If you're just committed to creating, the rest of it takes care of itself. Now, it doesn't mean you don't want to plan and systems and processes and tools and all that kind of stuff. But again, there's that thing of like acquiring the tools and putting them in the basement and letting them sit idle. And I think in the long run, it's a disservice to yourself. It weighs on you psychologically and emotionally. And it's kind of gotten even worse because that basement would have eventually become full. But in the digital space, you can just continue to add endless clutter, right? And you don't even notice it creeping up on you. And so there for me is a danger there, right? And in the digital space as well, it's just so easy to create more single-use plastics, as it were.
That's right. So we have just touched upon that 80/20 media big topic again, with a few key uplifting, inspiring stories to really bring the point across. And that, I think, is a great service. And I believe it is just 80/20.media to get access to all your gift, all your service, all your online course, and everything.
That's the beginning point. I mean, well, here's something. Here's a little business piece that we believe. Social media is for branding. Websites are for legitimacy, but funnels are really for sales. And sales doesn't mean money. It's just the transactional process. So all the free training that we offer as well goes through funnels, right? So people can come to our website and can see that we've been a company for over a decade. They can learn more about us. But really, we have a bunch of different entry points into the 80/20 environment. So one of the most common ones for people, which is a free training that we run on the first Saturday of every single month, is called the gift call. And it's just gift.8020.media. But again, this is an entry point. It gives you a free course. It gives you the support to accomplish the steps in that course by giving you the call as well. And this is what I meant earlier by an environment that's committed to creating, right? I don't want anybody to go there and take the course and not come into the calls, because the likelihood that they're going to do anything with it is pretty much zero. So the goal is to get you on the call where we discuss the difference between consuming and creating, try and help you establish what's important to you, right? What is your mountain? What is that energy that will pull you uphill each time you go to your mountain? And then you can take these tools. And that's just the gear to get you up there, to help you accomplish that better, right? It's like having the boots and the coat and the rest of the stuff that you carry in your pack, half of which you hope you never have to use, by the way, right? Like in the winter and touring, you've got all this avalanche gear in the backpack that you carry around because you don't want to get caught without it, but you hope you never actually have to pull out and put to use. And that's what a well-designed plan is too. There's all this contingency in there. There's all these things that you're like, just in case, it's there for you. But hopefully you're making all the right decisions where you're not, put in that situation where you have to do the emergency stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing all of that.
You're welcome.
So I know you also have a huge Facebook group. I say huge because of the amount of free training there is in the guides area. What is the name of the Facebook group?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question. This kind of comes as the other part of the gift. So the name of the group is 100 million gift. And that's because along with the gift call itself, which is this group training, I gave myself a personal mission a couple of years ago. I didn't think it was going to take this long. To be honest, I was a little bit over optimistic, I guess. But I sat down one day and it's like, I know that reliably I can create a 6-figure business plan that fits on a Post-it note. Like, it's very simple math to be like, here's how you break 6 figures. It actually breaks multiple 6 figures and fails at 6 figures. There's that contingency I'm talking about from earlier, right? And my goal was, I know I can do this. I know I can do it in 30 minutes. Now, what happens if I do it a bunch of times? And so I did the math. And the math is, if I have 1,000 of these 30-minute consulting calls, where I'm like, here's how you break multiple 6 figures in a 20-hour work week, that means double the median income in half the average job hours, by the way. More contingency. But I came up with this concept of what happens if I do that 1,000 times? That means I'm giving a gift of 100 million to the universe, right? And I'm just pushing out that much value, and I don't care what I get back in return. That's how the ripple effect works, by the way. So I set my goal to do that. And, I'm up in the 700s now. And so that, to get there, it's call.8020.media. And I'm still trying to finish off those 100K calls. But, that's why the Facebook group got its name. And the goal of that Facebook group is to support everyone who's ever had one of those calls to achieve that goal. Like, you don't have to get my help to implement that plan. Of course, you're more than welcome to. Of course, on our higher level services, when you sign on, we actually guarantee you're going to cross that 6-figure line, and there's no escape unless you leave the planet before we hit that goal. But, you know, for the people who aren't ready for that commitment, the pathway is still there. All the tools are still there. The training is still there. And every single thing that I put into that group is designed to help you achieve that goal with or without more help.
That sounds fabulous.
Thank
That
you.
really sounds fabulous. Yeah. I'm going to continue to dive into all these resources because it's so valuable. And this is also why I asked you to come back, because in the meantime, I also continue to really like discover, click, and see everything that is available on your platform, understanding that there is a lot of gift, a lot of material available, and it is 100% up to the people, the entrepreneurs, to actually go through the material, think of it, find your own why and your own reason to move forward and to push through any resistance. And that is in itself a wonderful gift. And I think it is a gift that keeps on giving, because it keeps on reminding you to give yourself permission to break free, break through, and achieve what you have put yourself to achieve.
And when you give yourself that permission, you're giving yourself permission to impact the lives of others. Right?
Indeed.
So that's how we start the ripple effect.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That is one of the things I immediately thought about when I was attuned to the Reiki as well, is that, wow, so that means that every person I get to heal or unlock or really help with that, with that energetics of our being, actually will, by ripple effect, positively impact all their surroundings, knowingly and unknowingly, because at the end of the day, we are all energy, we are all one and the same matter. So by healing one cluster after another, meaning one person who is a cluster of their own surroundings, you actually impact a lot of people. So I know someone who says, I'm impacting 1 billion people, and I'm thinking, yeah, it is just a question of how many clusters who go further. Yeah, you do actually impact 1 billion people after some effort and an intention. Setting up your impact.
Exactly. Yeah. And each one of those little calls and business plans, like written right at the very top of it, see for yourself, it's like, this is a plan to help you impact 25 million lives. Right? So that math is already embedded, exactly what you're saying, because again, the exponential side of the ripple effect is crazy, right? Like even on the social network and like person to person contact, each one of us knows around 200 people, right? So by you and I having this conversation, that's 200 times 200, we have the potential to reach 40,000 people together. And that's like shaking hands and face-to-face conversations. In the digital space, I just multiply that by 5. So you have 1,000, I have 1,000, and in this conversation, we have the potential of impacting 1 million people already, right? So then we repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, and it grows.
Truly love it. Jacob, thank you so much. I'm going to make sure to put all your links and gift and description in the description of this 3rd episode. And I really invite you in the audience to make sure to also listen to the 2nd episode, which is about Jacob's origin story when at 17 years old, he went into a deep coma after an accident and had to actually relearn and connect with his highest life mission quickly. And the 1st episode is all about that 100-year health plan, health and well-being. All right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. And I truly appreciate you. Thank you, Jacob, for coming back.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Be well.